Welcome to the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner. This week in the Royal Corner, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, at the Fortune Summit for the world's most influential women. Boo Boo Kitty Katie could only dream of an invitation. We also have breaking news. Prince Andrew is giving up his titles voluntarily. I'm sure there's a catch. We also have a terrible week of headlines for Prince Andrew, showing his ties to the now deceased child trafficker and abuser Jeffrey Epstein. We also have Virginia Giuffre's new book about to drop, with excerpts being published saying he acted as if he was entitled to engage in intercourse with her. We also have Sycophant of the Week, darlings. And there's more. And the more that we also have, darlings, is Boo Boo Kitty Katie and the Green-Eyed King in waiting in Northern Ireland in a rather hurried visit, and them also playing head boy and head girl to the Prince and Princess of Jordan, same family to the Crown Prince, who has done next to nothing to support the people in Gaza. And we have King Bitter himself, sitting with Aborigines in Australia House in London, lamenting the return of land that they could no longer derive funds from in a interesting exercise for our consumption and for his rehabilitation. All this and more, darlings, on the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner. So before I start, I always like to begin with gratitude. Thank you to everyone who has been writing, commenting, supporting with donations, and saying such encouraging words. I noted last week that my producer told me to hurry up, Denise, stop yabbering in the beginning. And one of my listeners says, we love you, we love your yabber. Thank you, darling. Thank you so much. Do not forget to make a donation at deniseheadley.com. Alternatively, you can give me a bit of Bitcoin or buy me 3 rings and chips. Shall we jump in, darlings? Let's. Right. So, my lovelies, I hope you had a beautiful and pleasant week. A little bit like the Duchess. So, on Tuesday, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, was at the Fortune Most Powerful Women Summit in Washington, D.C. During her Q&A, she talked about women having financial independence and some of the lessons that she had learned from As Ever. Always positive stuff with the Duchess. And of course, she looked absolutely fabulous. She wore a cream ensemble from Broche Walker, which is a favourite from the Sussex brand. The Duchess shared her thoughts about the first look deal that she had with Netflix. And she talked about the ability to have flexibility in her approach to creating her content and the partners that she wanted to work with. She also spoke about season 3 and the special holiday release that's coming up just in a couple of weeks in November. She talked about experimenting with shorter content and doing recipes and 30-minute shows, all things that are inspiring and also demonstrating her breadth across a whole area of things that she's skilled at. She said that her key focuses is going to be As Ever, with Love with Meghan, and she was also said that there's going to be behind the scenes work, developing content and creating new projects in the new year. What was interesting to me was the way in which she came across, and she demonstrated that she had multiple projects, but she also was very focused on negotiating smart routes for her business ventures. And she also talked about the importance of the work-life balance. And it's genuine when it comes from the Duchess, because you can actually see what she's doing. And when you compare that to any other working royals who frankly don't work, you can see the reason why they are so envious of her progression, because she basically said, this is not a room designed for me. I'm going to create another room. And boy, is she shining in that room. Also this week on the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner, Prince Andrew apparently has given up his royal titles. Now, this is a very interesting move in my opinion. I have taken this week off from doing my live show, so consequently I'm doing the Royal Corner on Friday, because I try to do the Royal Corner on Thursday, but most times I try and hit it on a Friday sometimes if I'm just, feeling particularly ambitious. And this Friday I saw this headline that he is giving up his royal titles, and I went and checked online, of course. And this comes after a week of absolutely pitiful headlines for the Yorks and their associated associations, namely the royal family. So I'm going to play you a creator who is a bit of a royal watcher. Allegedly, he's a news journalist. And as I said at the beginning, the moving of the titles from Prince Andrew, are they voluntary, and what does it actually mean? Listen to this chap.
Clarify, Prince Andrew has not been stripped of his titles. He's only agreed to stop using most of them anyway. So he's still the Duke of York. He's just agreed to stop using that title.
So I think that's interesting in the sense that if he has basically said, I'm not going to call myself the Duke of York, then does it actually mean he's lost anything? Because if you decide one day your name is Sharon and tomorrow you want to be called Tracy, you can ask everyone to call you Tracy. Do you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't mean very much. And I actually think maybe once this is dissected a little bit, we will see that this is a performative and perfunctory exercise for the benefit of the public to try and suggest that the leopard part of the body, the bit that's actually oozing with sepsis, which is the Yorks, they're poisoning the rest of the body, that's been lanced and it's been removed. Well, frankly, I don't think so. Let's continue to listen to this person on TikTok.
Nothing's been taken from him at all. The decision was taken in recognition of the fact, I'm told, by royal sources, that the prince...
So he's got royal sources, so we know what that means. This is probably a veneered exercise for TikTok.
Prince's personal issues continue to be an unwelcome distraction from the work of the wider royal family.
There is no work, that's just a joke.
Read his associations with Epstein. Crucially, Prince Andrew is still Prince Andrew. He was the son of a monarch, so that title can't be taken away. He's still Prince Andrew. He won't be known as Duke of York. He won't use the title of Your Royal Highness. There are various other honours as well he won't be using anymore, but he does actually retain most of them. How did this come about? Well, was he pushed? Was he shoved? Was it voluntary? Well, all we know is that it was taken in consultation, this decision, with the king.
So King Bitter had a hand in removing the diseased part of the body. Not unusual there. However, I'm not sure how true this is in terms of there being any significant loss. It might be just like taking a loss, to just take a slap in the face, but everything else remains the same. And the king can be seen to have had the perception of taking a decisive step. Let's continue with this gentleman.
And the king is glad of the outcome. We also know that Prince William was involved in those discussions. And
also, that the green-eyed king in waiting was involved, allegedly, based on his sources. Therefore, he's a mouthpiece for the firm.
And other members of the royal family. And also, he won't be invited to Christmas. So
Whoopie-doo. No Christmas cake at Balmoral. Poor him. I'm sure he's still enjoying elements of the public purse via some unusual route, which the public have absolutely no idea about. So that's the interesting thing. He's actually voluntarily said, I'm no longer going to be called by those names. So what does it really mean when we delve deeper into it? And I will keep you abreast of that, darlings, because as far as I'm concerned, like I said, this is a veneer exercise, like a chiffon dress. You can see through it. And the view is not always appealing. Right! Moving along swiftly, darlings. We also have in the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner this week, my second story, or should I say my third story this week in the Royal Corner, is about Prince Andrew. And this article articulates that he had a fall from grace. I articulate he never even occupied a position of grace to begin with. And I believe that the nexus of his voluntary withdrawal of the titles is all of the bad PR him and his family have been having over the last couple of weeks. And right on schedule, darlings, it's Sycophant of the Week. Laura Bundock from the Sky News Network. This week, the royal correspondent has got herself a nomination for Sycophant of the Week. Come in, Laura, darling. Take a seat. Plant your bun docks on the chair, Miss Bundock. You are a contender. Do sit down, darling. She writes, Prince Andrew's fall from grace is a never-ending saga, a perennial problem for the palace. So that title alone garners Laura Bundock the title of Sycophant of the Week. Why? Because of the early framing for the reader. It frames the scandal as a problem for the palace, as opposed to looking at the gravity of his associations and of his behaviour in the past. It decides that the institution's discomfort is more important than the gravity of the alleged crimes, perennial and palace problem. The whole tone is about preserving the institution. She continues, after the title, the Duke of York isn't a working royal, doesn't attend official events, and is rarely seen in public. He's been stripped of his duties and patronages, but is this enough? She then tells you where to direct your attention about the problem, the associations and his behaviour. This is more troubling embarrassment for the royal family, as once again Prince Andrew's character and dubious associations hit the headlines. Further details about his relationship with Virginia Giuffre and convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein in the posthumous publication of Giuffre's memoir are now circulating in the press. She then tells you, we've heard a lot of this before, but Miss Giuffre's description of an entitled prince thinking it was his birthright to sleep with her makes for uncomfortable reading. So Laura Bundock presents Virginia Giuffre's allegations as uncomfortable reading. That's the characterization. So she wants to minimize the matter to one of personal discomfort for the reader rather than a seriously actionable claim of abuse which should be investigated by the police, but it hasn't been and won't be. It has no critical dissection of his denial in the face of the evidence that was provided. Let's not forget, Mum coughed up at least 12 million, I think it was, for Giuffre, so she could have a peaceful jubilee. And then it goes on to mildly point out that it was a suggestion of an allegation that has caused this problem. She writes, and it comes just days after an email, singular, was published suggesting the Duke of York was in touch with Epstein after he supposedly cut ties. So once again giving the framing of, is it possible? Maybe not. She then goes on to talk about how this is causing the king some consternation, so we need to centre the king's feelings as important in this article. Prince Andrew's name is synonymous with royal scandal, and each bombshell brings further pain for the king. He's portrayed as a victim of his brother, as opposed to an enabler. The use of the language perennial problem is a key piece of PR framing in this article by Miss Bundock. She seeks to cast Andrew as unsolvable, an ongoing nuisance, deflecting from the idea that the institution itself is responsible for creating monsters like himself. She then goes on to talk about the difficulties of the title being removed. Those are never discussed when we're talking about removing the title from the Sussexes, of course. And she presents the idea as being insurmountable. This also comes 2 weeks after his ex-wife, Miss Ferguson, who's still living a life of absolute luxury, was also caught up in the scandal, as it's alleged his whole family, including some of the other members of the family, were all eating and drinking from the money pot, which was the Epstein ATM. And by mentioning Sarah Ferguson in this article, she seeks to isolate the problem within the York branch of the body of royalty. The final part of her article, she examines the whole harm through the lens of the Windsors. And for that, she absolutely gets Sycophant of the Week, darling. Thank you, Laura Bundock from Sky News, Royal Correspondent, for your article, which wasn't an art. It was a PR stunt in spin, in reframing absolutely terrible behaviour as an isolated incident. Thank you, darling, and for that you get Sycophant of the Week. I know I'll see you again. Unfortunately. Also this week in the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner. As I mentioned before, Virginia Giuffre's book, her memoir, Nobody's Girl, is going to be available, I think, next week. And excerpts of it have been publicized and people have been talking about it. And part of that article I just shared with you was in relation to, obviously it was all about Prince Andrew and the sycophantic nature of our press in this country, but also the fact that this book is coming out has also, I think, influenced the decision of Prince Andrew to voluntarily, with quotation marks, no longer use his titles, because you actually need an act of parliament to remove a title of that nature. So it's just voluntary. So to me, like I said, it's perfunctory. Oh yes, we had Boo Boo Doolittle Katie once again dressed like a collection of damp leaf shades. Why does she always wear those colours? You know, it's like going out in Epping Forest and crunching some leaves and looking down, and that's the only colour selection she has. It's either brown, slightly green, or this one here, deep green. Wear a pastel shade, na Katie. Anyway, her and the green-eyed king in waiting, I believe she wears so much green because, like I said last week, it reflects the envy in her husband's heart. And that coat, my God, I'm looking at it now, with the collar and the pockets, the whole thing just screams charity shop wannabe. Or as the Americans say, thrift store wannabe. They were pictured at a very hurried visit in Northern Ireland. So they met qualified firefighters as they visited farms during their first joint visit to Northern Ireland in 3 years. And this, of course, is newsworthy. Let's not forget they're moving into their fourth or fifth forever home before bonfire night. At the public expense, of course. Anyway, they went wandering around, talking to people in the essential services so that they could look like they're interested in the infrastructure of the country. They had a tour of a fire and rescue service, learning and development college, and then they traveled to a farm. So it was a whistle-stop tour, fire, you know, you could say hi, smile, do something for 10 minutes, and then just wander off. And don't forget the environmental footprint of this visit, because they didn't go up there on a bus or public transport. They flew in a helicopter at the public expense and had a massive carbon footprint whilst doing this jolly again. Apparently, they went to some training exercises at a £50 million state-of-the-art training site. They probably own that and they were paying them rent. And then they were given a tour of the fire engine site, which has 50 acres, and they lorded it over them because they got 150 acres at Forest Lodge and said, look at you and your poor little location. We got more land than you could dream of, you peasants. Also this week, they played head boy and head girl to the Prince and Princess of Jordan. So on the 15th of October, they met with the future King and Queen of Jordan. This is the same Jordan that has done absolutely nothing to support the Gazans in the general removal of them from their indigenous land based on their ethnicity. So Crown Prince Hussein and Princess Rajwa of Jordan visited the Prince and the Princess of Wales. They spent a few days in the UK and absolutely nothing of consequence was talked about, because as joint royal families, they have a similar approach to the letter paper. They went to their wedding at the public expense, I'm sure, in 2023, and this is important for us to know. And that was about that. Oh yes, and Prince Eugenie, she was drafted in as a temporary royal. And she took the princess around a hospital where mental health experts use art to rehabilitate people. It's a shame that she didn't take her father on the visit. He could have possibly been rehabilitated, because I absolutely think there's a few screws loose there. And also this week in the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner, darlings, King Charles has met with Aboriginals in Australia House in London, and he was somehow celebrating giving them back what was stolen by his bloodline and forebearers. Regrettably, he could not return the lives of the G-side that takes place whenever Europeans come to visit. Apparently, King Charles attended a commemoration for the 40th anniversary of the Uluru handbag. He was joined at London's Australia House by 9 Uluru Kata Taju traditional owners known as Anna Agjus. I've probably butchered that. A bit like the Europeans when they come among indigenous people. We're having that! Kill all of them! Kill them all! He attended the 40th anniversary of the handbag in his first visit to London's Australia House since he became king. And of course, there's excellent photo shots with him and the melanated people. In 1985, on October the 26th, the Commonwealth government handed title deeds for Uluru Katu Taja back to its traditional owners known as the Anna Najus. Australia's High Commissioner to the UK, Stephen Smith, an agent of deference I'm sure, said the monarch's attendance was a symbol of profound respect. Not so much a respect that they paid any reparations, they just stood there and had some Aboriginal tea. Not much in terms of meaningful impact, in my opinion. This absolutely wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the Australian government who in 1976 passed the Aboriginal Lands Rights Northern Territory Act. And it gave Aboriginals a legal pathway to reclaim what the Europeans had already stolen. Namely the forebearers of King Charles, who now stands there sipping tea and looking important and, regretful and sorrowful of the deeds of the past, but whilst not actually doing anything, and it's all performative. I think that's about it along with my stories this week. It's going to be a short one this week. I forgot to mention that the boo-boo kitty Katie was swatted like a mosquito. Be gone, irritant, pung, away from her husband in Northern Ireland. I forgot to mention that. There was quite a bit of stir made about that on the internet this week. She tried to give a public display of affection and she was thwarted, to say the least. So, I hope you've enjoyed this week's Royal Corner. Don't forget to make a donation and also, please, darlings, please do subscribe. Click the notification bell and select all, and I'll be delivered neatly, darling, just like a beautiful letter through your letterbox. Oh yes, just before I go, have you seen the group Republic and how effective they've been in the media this week? They have been all over the press arguing essentially the way, because of what's happened with Prince Andrew and the way that he's being treated, they're arguing that he's being treated basically like an internal family problem as opposed to a predator, potential abuser, and he should be treated accordingly. And I thought that was pretty interesting this week. And they were saying there should be full disclosure and basically he needs to be investigated. And I'm in full agreement with that. And that's it, darlings. See you next week. Toodle pip, darlings. Thank you for your listening ears. Right. Cut, darling. Cut-ta!